Oh, hi there. Sorry, that's a really bad intro. Getting to see the audio mixer and all that other fun stuff. I'm CoinStamp180, otherwise known as Swirling Vortex '09 on YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of Elden Ring Reforged. How is everyone doing? I'm sorry I'm late. I had to look into some audio mixer issues on top of coming home later than expected. Well, I'll talk about that in a hot minute, but yeah, I had to figure I wasn't hearing alerts for some reason, and it turns out that my streaming computer had its audio set to the native Nvidia card on it instead of voice meter, so I wasn't hearing any of that. I saw the alerts because I don't bother to stray from this OBS screen too often, but you know, now I can actually react to the sound and know that someone has followed or subbed or whatever, and I appreciate all of that, of course. So, hope everyone is safe out there. The world's dangerous. Last time, we started wiping the floor, and let me just go ahead and turn that audio down. Okay. Last time, we went through and killed a bunch of nighttime bosses. There are a couple more that we need to go kill, but that can wait. As of a couple of days ago, the Elden Ring Reforged mod did get a patch, version 4.43, which, according to the mod information, I won't read everything. I'll instead point you to the mod page by typing in exclamation mark. It should be ERR, no quotes. You go there and you can view the change log, as well as Kernifer puts a paste bin in with a particular file. So if you copy the paste bin link into your URL browser of choice for any particular file, it'll have the individual patch notes for you to look at. I might put a notice in about that with one of our commands about the use of paste bins. But the important point of that is to say, this patch contains a fair number of changes, but the one that we're really interested in is Flame of Frenzy. Supposedly, Kernifer made it easier to hit everything using it, so Flame of Frenzy should be a slightly better spell now. Other than that, there really isn't anything else of note in the patch. Like, it changes a lot of stuff we don't have access to yet. And there's another armor set passive added. That's pretty much it. One thing I did do, you got those who know me on Steam or, watched me on Discord probably noticed that I logged into Elden Ring way before I started streaming. Don't worry, I didn't do anything other than mark places we've missed. So, for example, this here is an NPC spot. If you guys remember Bloody Fingers Hunter Yura, who was supposed to be here, and he helped us fight Nereus, excuse me. He ends up here. So I've marked his location for us. There's a catacomb over here that we've missed. And over here at night is a... actually, I should change this to a sword because that's what we use. We use to mark those things. Yeah, we've got a few things we need to go collect before we march into the river, never to be seen again. One of the first things I think we should do, however, is not even do any of that, and instead to finish fighting Mad Tongue Albric. If we do that, we'll have we will be able to get the Cipher Pata back here along with some other items. And that's pretty much about it. I was about to say, no, I didn't fight him. You guys have already seen this before, so I'm not going to bother talking. I'll answer any questions that people might have, but... But that's really about it. Yeah, that's about par for the course, honestly. Let's see. Since, for those who are on Twitter, you guys probably know that I managed to figure out how to add custom docks to OBS. So now I could do things like manage predictions, which I can't start the prediction. Oh, well, I guess I can. Let's see. Must follow terms of service. I don't know too much about this yet. I do want to start using predictions every so often, but I'll test the feature out before I seriously spend stream time on it. The other thing I did was add the boss weakness document from Elden Ring Reforged onto my OBS docs. So now I have an easy access to any of the contents of that Google spreadsheet. So if I want to know, hey, here are the reference pages, there you go. If I want to know a particular boss's weakness, I can do that. My stream output may, or I hope it did change the stream output size. The canvas size adjustment should just be on my side, but you never know. If the canvas appears smaller than it should, please just let me know. That way I can fix it. Okay, that does have hyper armor. And I believe, yeah, I took Frostbite and Blood Loss at the same time. That's a potent combo, by the way. Frostbite increases damage taken. And Blood Loss, well, or Hemorrhage, well, is a lot of instantaneous damage, which if you're taking more damage because Frostbite, then, you know, it's just gonna be a one-hit kill on a squishy plate mage like us. So the one major reason I was late is because of lunch. And, my dad took me to lunch, which I'm feeling pretty good about. You don't refuse summons or lunch from your parents because you want to stream. Now, if you're doing this for a real, like, if you are a content creator who actually gets paid a significant sum doing this, that'd be different. I don't. Not yet. And because I don't, well, I really shouldn't be refusing summons to have lunch. It's not that you guys aren't important, but it's my dad. And he's 54, so I'm only gonna get to spend so much time with him before, you know, he kicks the bucket. And oh, hey there, Shade, or Shadio. How are you doing? Welcome to the stream. Hope you enjoy your stay. Oh, I remember, I had a note about this. If people go by different names, compared to what they used to go by, it is kind of difficult for me to remember this. I'm almost 100% sure I had a note about this name, and I have done forgot. No, I don't need another pop out of this. Great. I love having issues with... Oh, okay. Got this. Thank you, Ultraman. Yeah, I'll get him eventually. We have a good setup for this. We just need to, well, I need to make sure that I'm paying attention. I do have a notice flying around that I don't really talk during NPC invader fights or boss fights for similar reasons. Because I'd like to concentrate. I'd like to be able to actually kill something. But nonetheless, I hope you two are having a good time and you've had a good day. Oh, geez. Hey, Alex. Sorry, it's been a while since I've seen that name. Forgive me, please. I'm glad you're back. Okay, I'm probably not going to be able to inflict madness at this juncture. I really need to make sure I keep on top of my notes about usernames so I don't forget who people are supposed to be. I have a bad habit of this. For those who don't know, I guess I can blab about this and fight at the same time. For those who don't know what I'm doing, this is Elden Ring Reforged. Lies of P, I've seen a couple things about it, but not really too much. Not sure yet. I don't have any real thoughts. What do you think? You know, I keep wanting to concentrate, and I keep talking during that. Where's the focus commands when you need them? Really? Oh, I guess I clipped the cloud there. That'll do it. Right. Like I was saying. Elden Ring Reforged is a mod that's somewhere between, like, you know, a spell pack or it's somewhere between a spell pack and an overhaul, where it changes a lot of stuff. For example, the backdash is replaced with a duck. Like a ducking animation. Okay, I really gotta pay attention now, or I am gonna bleed out and die. Oh yeah, the Lies of P is the Pinocchio game. That's right. I can't even believe I forgot. Yeah, I've seen a couple things about it. It looks interesting. That's right, Albrick. Drink your flask, and then realize there's nothing there. And pretty much the trick with Albrick as God, okay? You know, I say trick, and then instantaneously I get served a slice of humble pie. Really? Come on. Oh. That's tilting. This is extra tilting. Well, at least him inflicting status on me is the same as me inflicting status on him. Okay. Good. We've killed him. Awesome. I need a sound effect for this, but I don't have one. Alright. Without being a prattling mess, let me go back and read over these comments again and answer them in a coherent manner, because I was not a coherent person during that. Which is why I don't talk during these fights. Not supposed to. Not into Souls-like games. Looks cool. Never thought I will see Pinocchio being that BA talking about Liza P there. Since I'm familiar with Liza P being a game that's developed, but I am not familiar with Liza P itself. Let me do a quick Google foo search. Where it's like... It lets me look at some images of what it's supposed to be. Oh, so it's like Bloodborne and the Tale of Pinocchio all in one. Yeah. Where can you find Oracle's Remedy? I'm glad you asked that. So, the first one that you're supposed to get in the game, because Oracle's Remedy is a consumable. You also need the Oracle's Effigy to use it. You will find your first copy of the effigy at Merchant Kale. So after you come out of the and zip your way past the Tree Sentinel Kale, and I want to... It's either 200 or 500 runes. You can buy it straight up from him. I think the effigy is 2,000. You need the effigy to have access to the menu. But pretty much what the effigy does is give you access to the fortunes menu. But your question was specifically where to find it, not what it does. Hopefully that answers your question. Other copies of Oracle's Remedy are found at merchants. You can buy one here at the Castlemorn Rampart. You can buy one here at the Isolated Merchant. And I believe you can buy one here at this Nomadic Merchant. There are a couple more that have them. So far, I have 5 out of the 11 fortunes, meaning there are 6 more that I don't know about. And one of the merchants, I think, even sells 2. But you're able to get 5 just from Limgrave plus Sweeping Peninsula. And you just grind it up. The most expensive one, I think, is... It's either 8k or 12k. They do go up in price the further away from Kale you get. And all of the effigies are a limited amount. Yeah, accidentally used it up on Rogue when I was trying to find the stuff. Yeah, that happened. I used it up on Ranger accidentally, so I understand that. Happen to know where I can find a list of all the effects? I'm doing a modded run with your friend and think the classes would be real cool. Unfortunately, no. The only place I could think of to maybe even attempt to look for this is like in a pastebin file that Kernifer, or pastebin link that Kernifer submits with individual files. I don't know if the changelog has been updated to reflect fortunes yet. That's something Kernifer should probably get on at some point. I know the guy is really busy, super busy. So and the changelog is toward the bottom of the priority list. I want to say you might have better luck actually convincing someone to make a spreadsheet of this rather than trying to get the changelog altered, though. Kernifer is not always the most consistent about that. Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes you can go a few months without an update. It's just fine. Life is busy. I get that. I am hyped for the High on Life game. Oh, I don't know what that is, so let me exercise a little bit of Google Foo. See what I get. Upcoming comedic biopunk first-person shooter by Squanch Games. I like the way it looks. It looks cool. I might have to look into that. Yeah, I mean, if there's nothing else about the games industry, it constantly innovates. Especially as more it's created by the creators of Rick and Morty. Yeah, you know what? I'm not surprised with the way it looks and some of the artistic direction it's taken already. Just in the few photos I saw, I can't say I'm surprised. I believe that. Ultraman, I hope I answered your question. Please let me know if I've, or anyone on this stream for that matter, let me know if I've not sufficiently answered something for you, and I'll do my best to either try to re-answer it in a coherent manner, more coherent manner, or I can point you to someone who actually can answer the question. For those who are new to the stream, or new to ERR in general, if you type in !ERR, no quotes, into the chat, I have a hyperlink that'll take you to the mod page. The mod page has a Discord on it, and you can find anyone that is knowledgeable about the question, including Kernifer himself. That's one thing I will say about ERR is it's a great mod, and Kernifer is a great mod author. They will absolutely sit down to answer questions as long as they're not busy. And they don't snap. There are some moments where someone asks, I wouldn't say a stupid question, there are no such things, but sometimes silly questions show up, and Kernifer is very patient and very responsive. One of the best mod authors I think I've ever had the privilege of getting to know in even the slightest capacity. If there's ever any mod I would encourage you to check out just for the community and the responsiveness alone, it's this one. I love this mod. Sufficient answer. I'll do my best and just buy it from the other merchants. Yeah, the really the nice thing about the mod is that Kernifer's descriptions are fairly straightforward. They read just like, base ER's descriptions. So as long as the script's working correctly, you'll be able to figure it out. It'll all make sense. Like, it took me a hot minute to figure out what wizard or warlock fortunes were doing, but you can figure them out through experimentation. Just really nice. Thoughts on the Steam Deck? I don't know if I really have any, if I'm being completely honest. I know it's pretty much like it's sort of like Steam's version of a console. It's probably the best, or no, it's not a console. I'm thinking of something else. It's a, oh no, wait, no, I have it right. I'm mixing up the Elgato Stream Decks with the Steam Deck. That's what it is. Well, that's fun. Am I coming through okay? Good. Thank you. To continue my thought from where we left off, I don't know what's going on with OBS. I hope that doesn't happen again. I kind of liken it to the myriad number of PlayStation consoles, and even with the Switch and DS from Nintendo, there are like several models of each one. It adds to it's kind of clanky. Clunky. Clunky's the word I'm looking for. It's just another hardware tool used to enjoy the same great stuff everyone does. It's cool, and I'm sure it does some innovative stuff that I don't remember off the top of my head, but unless it does something that truly shakes up the market, it's similar to the Nintendo Wii U in some senses, where the things that it does that are unique fall into gimmick territory, and not saying that they aren't legitimate gimmicks. Gimmicks can be good, just they're gimmicky. They aren't novel. The gimmick is it tries to recolor the wheel rather than remake the wheel, and that's perfectly okay. Long story short, because I know that I can ramble, is that it's a nice piece of hardware. Oh, okay. Let me read this first. You can play games from Steam, and you could basically use it as a PC. Yeah, that sounds about right. It's a nice piece of hardware, and I'm sure it will house not some great games. It allows you to access your Steam library. So it's a good way to make sure your library isn't going to waste. But there's still some controversies around the Steam Deck right now that I would like to see fixed. Apart from that, and mostly that's on the developer side, not on Steam's side. I know was it Diablo or was it Halo? It was either something Bungie did or something Blizzard did, where it was like, hey, we're not going to let you use the Steam Deck for this. You got to get a PC. I'd have to look at the story again, but I know that something did come up with the Steam Deck that was very controversial, really outside of Steam's control. If we could clear up the controversies around that, then I would say my real net opinion would be it's hardware that lets you access your Steam library. Sounds cool. It's a way to make sure libraries aren't going to waste, and it is filling a very important niche. But it's not really any different than any other console machine. You're just changing what you can play on it. But that's cool. I like that. I'm still ambling with that opinion, but I hope it made some level of sense. I'm waiting to see what else they do with it, before my opinion on it changes from to oh, or great. I thought about buying it, but they announced they will make a new generation of Steam Deck at some point. Don't think it's worth it. Yeah, if they're gonna obsolete it with a new piece of hardware, yeah, wait. Then I would say my opinion on it right now is net neutral. I'm waiting to see what they'll do with the new Steam Deck then. If they innovate on the same great designs, then it'll be great. If they decide to just remint the same thing and make you pay more for it, no thanks. So we managed to grab the Cypher Pata, which is a fist weapon, for those who don't know. It's a very special fist weapon. It basically has built-in Blessed and Sacred all in one. It requires no strength or dex to use. It's a faith weapon, and you can even... I'm fairly sure that power stancing this lets you use 2 of them, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Regardless, we will get enough faith to use this, and it will be a great way of dealing holy damage in melee, and even have shield pierce. Just fantastic. Let's see. Since we're done with PvP, we can go ahead and slot all of... or, not PvP, but the NPC invader. I'm going to go ahead and reslot the one of 5 fortunes we have. I prefer playing as a wizard myself, but sometimes you just need warlock, and there's nothing to do about it. Actually, I just realized that we're going to be fighting the Deathrite bird, and so that fortune change is pointless. We're going to want to use miracles, or miracles? I just did the DS thing again. We want to be using incantations for that. What spells do we want then, without going overboard? The thing with boss fights is, with this sort of build, if you ever want to know what I'm doing in terms of builds, by the way, you could type in !player build, all one word, no quotes, and it'll let you know what I'm doing. But the plan, for those that don't want to type that out, or we're already talking about it, is we're going for a caster build. Faith, intelligence, and arcane, all at the highest levels, followed by statistics that increase our health, FP, and stamina. So we're definitely intending to cast spells. We want holy spells, and maybe we want a heal, just in case. Yeah, we want holy damage for this. Before we do that, though, we should go and grab this item. It'll help us out. We are missing a couple of talismans. Right now, we don't really have anything worthwhile. We have something for our health. We have stats at the cost of damage taken, and special stuff. We don't have anything that actually generically helps us yet, apart from the talismans that grant health. So this quick pit stop will give us the Green Turtle Talisman, which will increase our stamina regen, which on top of increasing stamina regen baseline for Wizard or Warlock fortunes, it'll increase it further, which means stamina will not be an issue over casting spells. The only cost we're going to have to pay for this is using a Stone Sword key, but it's worth it. And I ground up for the Stone Sword keys some time ago. As you guys can see, and I think I reported on last time, we went from having only 2 at some point to 11, using 1 now. And then we'll just start kind of polishing up what we've missed, and then eventually we'll be able to go underground. That's the goal for today, by the way, guys, is over here at this river well is a whole new area. And the underground is kind of like, I think of the best way to describe it. The underground is really pretty. It'll leave a very good first impression if you've never seen it before. I really want to get to show that off, but that means we have to take care of the rest of this first. Let's see, what else can I talk about? Also, holy is not the best for taking out these turtles. Okay, it kind of is, but only if you catch them by surprise. What can I talk about? What can I talk about? This happens all the time, where I'll get to talking about something, and I'll forget either where I want to take it, or I never quite finish my thought. I'm 30 now, so it's happening a lot more often. I do my best to combat that whenever I can, but it's not easy. You don't know when you're gonna forget. If you did, you wouldn't forget in the first place. How many times did I replay this? I've never beaten it. I haven't beaten it baseline either, technically. So in terms of my playthrough experience, I've played through vanilla Elden Ring about halfway. I can't show it on this map because we don't have enough area explored yet. But for those who are maybe more familiar with Elden Ring, I got just to Volcano Manor, which doesn't say a whole bunch because it's open world, but I explore each region before I move on, including Caelid over here. That's what this area is. So these 3 regions, plus the underground, plus Liurnia, plus several quest lines, about 50 to 60% of the game. And then when I heard about Elden Ring Reforged, I gave it a try on a whim and was like, okay, well, how's this gonna work? And it worked great. And I was like, oh, there's a community around this. Let me join it. And I did. And now I'm kind of playing back up to the same point again. Just modded this time instead of not modded. The only non-modded project I have going on is Blasphemous. That happens pretty much every Friday, although the current history of that is nebulous at best. But otherwise, everything else I do is modded. And that is because whenever I can, by the time I get ready to move on to a different project, I gotta head out and do some schoolwork. Okay, Ultraman, thank you so much for stopping by. You're very welcome. I'm glad to have been of service. I do my best to answer questions, and, oh, thank you for that 100-bit recharge. Really appreciate that. And go accomplish whatever schoolwork it is you need to do. It's important. Education is important. And take care, Ultraman. Thank you for stopping by. Really appreciate it. The reason that I go through these modded projects mainly is because by the time I get around to the... Oh, thank you. Thank you for the posture check. See, someone's making good use of those commands. Yeah, I have to sit up straight now. Thank you. The reason that I go through these modded projects is because typically by the time I get ready to start streaming a game, everyone has streamed it already. Everyone. So playing through the vanilla game just adds to the statistic, right? Like, yeah, it's another person, it's another perspective, but it gets old and it becomes saturated. So I figured streaming the mod lets me pay homage to the mod, but it also lets me do something not necessarily novel, but be creative about it. You know, do different content compared to what the mainstream is doing. It maybe get some new folks coming in along the way. But of course, I stream this as both a hobby and maybe a little bit of a way to make extra cash. Speaking of cash, I am considering I need to keep moving. Mainly, I'm already starting to sit here for 15-20 minutes. Not a good look. I'm considering a mixing board. I think I've said this a few streams, but I'm really putting the groundwork into finding one that's suitable. Most of the ones for 2PC setup, though, are somewhere between... If you're wanting cheap, I think it's $189, $250. And expensive is what happened here? The game just kind of hicked up for a second there. Or, 500 US dollars, at least. So I'm trying to figure out, what a good price point for a physical mixing board is. And you might be saying, well, if you're streaming on a 2PC setup, then you already have a mixing board for that to work, right? The answer is yes, I do, but it's virtual. It's called Voicemeeter. Voicemeeter's great, and I get a good amount of features that let me have some fine control over, what the audio sounds like. However, VBAN which is the system that it uses in order to communicate between computers, is based on local IP addresses, which, since it's being sent over local IP, that means your cable provider is getting involved in that. Or your ISP is getting involved in that. And because your ISP is getting involved, that means it costs data. Which, granted, Comcast is great in terms of its data capacity. I get 1 terabyte to use. It's a lot. V-band chews through that if the quality is anywhere near an acceptable level. Within the first week that I came back from streaming, or came back to stream after a 4-year pause, which those that are returning here know about, I managed to go from a few hundred gigs of data in like a month to 2.8 terabytes in a week, which for your ISP sets off all kinds of red flags, is absolutely unacceptable. And because I don't necessarily foot the bill for the internet myself, that leaves people up the creek and without a paddle, which isn't good. So I need something that curbs data usage and reduces the number of sources, a number of audio sources that I'm having to, record all at the exact same time. Right now, I'm kind of solving the situation by making sure V-band is turned off when I'm not using it, which is fine when I'm only streaming, but I also like to get back to my recording projects. And to get back to my recording projects, that means the V-band settings are going to be available or on more often, which is going to burn through data really fast. So in the US, you pay the internet bill based on data usage. It depends on what your package is. My folks over at my dad's house, we have something just short of a tiered network, which tiered networks are for businesses, and those are like in the hundreds of US dollars. It's based on the package, really. How much you pay for your internet service depends on the package you get. Not so much when they update the package, but the base package at time of purchase. So if you have like, I don't know, 10 megabytes of upload speed and like 100 megabytes of download speed and maybe 500 gigabytes of data to use, that would cost a certain price. And it depends on who your ISP is. Some charge based on the rate, others charge based on the package, some have a mix of both. It really just depends on who you talk to. That's the simple answer. Anything else I say beyond that point is specifics. Comcast sets it up in packages. So as long as you don't go beyond what the package provides, it's a set rate every month. If you don't have protections for that, if you go over your data for any reason, you obviously don't get internet when the data stops, and they'll call you and they'll say, hey, we noticed that you went over your data. Would you like to, pay a little more for some extra data? And typically they don't give you more than maybe 50 gigs when they do this. And then they upcharge your account a lot. Which makes sense. It's basically the equivalent of having a bank overage. Where if you overdraft your bank account for any reason, you're going to pay overdraft fees. Silly, but that's how the system works. It's the same principle. Only when you overdraft, in air quotes, your data, you get charged, at least with Comcast, somewhere between $150 to $300 US dollars, depending on the package you've gone over. The package we have, that my dad and his wife have, have protections set in. So once they go over the terabyte data limits, it becomes real slow. Like, download speeds are capped and all kinds of other stuff. Which, if it were just me, I wouldn't care so much about. But because it's not just mine, it's not a tenable situation. You see what I'm saying? So, searching for a mixing board probably won't completely cut down on costs, but it won't completely cut down on costs, but it will reduce the amount of data I need to use when I'm firing up Voicemeeter Banana. As at the moment, you have to send... At the current moment, I send out 3 signals that have a set data consumption rate. And those 3 signals eat up a lot of data. I'd like to get this number down to 1 per computer. 2. Because the computers still need to talk to each other. Otherwise, they're not sending anything. And you guys wouldn't hear the game. I'd have to figure out how to make sure my capture card's behaving. Let me check out this message. Interesting. This thing with the data usage. We only have it when it comes to mobile. Oh, that's a separate can of worms. When it comes to internet connection at your home, there's only a monthly subscription. Yeah, I think Europe pretty much uses a subscription model for this. As far as I'm aware, Europe and Canada have, like, subscription models for this stuff. The U.S. is the only place in the world I know of that it doesn't have a set way of doing business when it comes to internet data. It really lets the company decide how they're going to do it, which has its own pros and cons. When you pay Comcast enough money, you will get good service. My tier 1, or not tier 1, my close to tier 1, or tier 3, I forget the exact naming conventions, but when you have something that is just short of business level service, where at a business level they have to come check out, issues that arise with your cable box and stuff, we pretty much almost get the same exact treatment, where it's like, hey, we're a paying customer who pays a lot of money for a good upload speed, a great download speed, and a 1 terabyte data cap. You had better come service us. So Comcast is pretty vigilant about that for us, because the package is near the top. But some lower packages, not so much. Like, if you get like a basic family plan, they might put you on the back burner, which has its own problems. You're looking for a lantern in this situation. I don't know. I think all systems like that have their pros and cons. On one hand, you have companies who can charge good and bad rates for variable levels of service on internet data consumption. So your level of service varies, which means you can modulate it as a customer. If you don't want to pay for, or you only need a certain level of service, you don't pay extra. Now, the downside is that if the company changes the price for any particular reason, and the price becomes untenable, then that's a problem. But on the other hand, the system you describe, where you have a set rate and the internet's pretty cheap, 1,000 megabytes, yeah, good internet is extremely expensive. Like, if you're all of your streamers, all of your content creators out there, pretty much, if you don't have good internet, you're probably not going to have a great audience turnout. That's just how it is. Because your audio and video depend on having a good upload speed. Download speed's the how they get you. You want to really pay attention to upload speed for that. Having this subscription model means that it's pretty much locked in. But I imagine there are subscription tiers. So maybe it's one of those, Coin doesn't know everything that's going on, so he should probably not talk about it that much. But I imagine the vulnerabilities or downsides of a subscription is that unless you change the subscription, or how do I word this? Subscriptions sort of imply you're getting service. I guess really it's the same, isn't it? Because in America, you're paying a rate per month. So it's kind of like a subscription. It's not called that. It's called a bill. So calling it a subscription seems like a nice change of word. Maybe it's the same, now that I'm thinking about it. Also, I did not talk to who I was supposed to. Let's fix that. So after you fight Nereus, you'll end up... Yura will end up moving here. And you can talk to him for some additional dialogue, and it will advance his quest line further.
Ah, we meet again. To have fought Nereus and lived. You must have seen your share of battle. I am Yura, as you might recall. Hunter of bloody fingers, tarnished, held in thrall by cessblood. Zealots, who stalk their own. You stay the path. You're certain to face more of them. Just remember, no kinship with their ilk remains. Their madness precludes it. Don't let your emotions stay your blade.
I feel like whoever is the VA for Yura did a way over the top dramatization. Oh god, okay. We're gonna get you away from Yura before I fight you. What state are you from? Okay, that's a different question than where I'm born. I'm glad that I looked at that. I am in South Carolina. Currently. That's where my dad's place is over there. This is the one time I wish I had packed Catch Flame. Okay, I'm sorry, Yura, what were you saying?
Be on your way. Perhaps we will meet again. If fate permits.
Very well, Yura. Well, I will be on my way. And I suppose South Carolina doesn't exactly have the best internet services, but it's it's serviceable. Just, research your companies before you get your data. Comcast is a mixed grab bag in terms of, a state-by-state analysis. I hear they're awful. Absolutely awful if you're toward the Midwest. And, serviceable if you're in the Southeast. Have you ever thought about moving to a different state? Yes and no. I thought about moving to a different country, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. But, if I'm being completely serious, I have thought about moving to different states. But, right now, in my current life circumstances where I'm in school, and on top of that, the housing situation in the U.S. is increasingly untenable, meaning rent is getting extremely expensive. It is much cheaper to buy a house to own than a house to rent. Rent can vary from $2,500 US dollars to around $1,400. That's a couple more zeros, or those have one more zero than I really want to pay right now. I remember when rent was somewhere between $600 to $1,200 US dollars, depending on, where you were. With, the West Coast having more expensive rates. different standard of living and stuff. If I were to move somewhere else, I'd probably go to the Midwest. I wouldn't go all the way out to California or Washington State. I hear interesting stories about people over there. Just like anywhere else, I suppose. But so I think the coastlines scare me a little bit, because that's where all the extremely hyper-partisan craziness is accumulating in the U.S. is along the coasts or along the borders of the U.S. Maybe... trying to think. Maybe Oklahoma? If I really wanted to go somewhere in the States? Oklahoma or Nevada. Something like that. Something in inland U.S. But I've thought about it, but I'm really not ready to make that move yet either. But it is a nice question. Since you're in Romania, have you thought about whether or not you want to leave Romania? Not saying you need to or that it's a good idea, just you asked me out of curiosity probably, so I'm returning the question back to you. Really? Come on, slime. Yeah, these slime things made of bone have some interesting hitboxes on their attacks. And they have a bigger reach than you think. You'd be surprised at how much, how much space you need to not get caught up in their attacks. So back here is one of the places that we missed. Well, I missed. You guys didn't miss it. You guys are our chat. You guys know exactly where everything is. Maybe not everyone in chat, but collectively, chat always has the answers. You just gotta find the right person. But I don't always have all the answers. That's a bit of a running gag on most streams. Some people are moving into Texas because of the permissive laws about guns. Yeah, you pretty much have that right. The overly permissive laws about guns, I might add. I feel like the moving is a symptom of what is going on in the U.S. It really is. Because if you think about it, before, most states have some states are truly blue states or red states. But a lot of them have at least some places where they're purple. By people moving to a place of preference, what they're actually doing is forcing states to become bluer or redder. And this is just virtue of demographic statistics, like population statistics. There's nothing inherently evil about that. However, that can be a warning sign, because once you have states once every state is totally blue or totally red, guess what you have the recipe for? You have the recipe for drawing lines, like with the American Civil War, where it was North versus South. Well, this time if a civil war happens, it might not be North versus South. It'll be this collection of states versus that collection of states, whatever name they want to give it. And if population movement completes itself to that degree, then there is a chance that the U.S. can come out of a civil war. If, however, a civil war to erupt now, it would be a complete dissociation of the country, because populations would be too intermixed with one another. Purple states, if every state is purple, then every state is a civil war battleground, and therefore what you would probably end up with are 50 states bickering. Do I own a gun? No, I own a crossbow though. And let me get back to that other statement. I'm sorry I missed that. I think I will go to Germany next year to work there, but you don't really want to stay long term. Ah, so you're a bit of an explorer. I can admire that. Yeah, exploring Europe would be good. Probably experience a whole bunch of cultures. And I think Germany is relatively stable in terms of its workforce there. You could probably find really good work there. If you've, I don't know how committed you are to that decision, but have you considered looking over the German language? I know if I were to move to Canada, I would want to make sure that I learn all the phrases for, say, what the difference is between Canadian English and American English, or, some amount of French, so that if I end up accidentally crossing into Quebec, I know how to get out. And I don't run afoul of things that the Quebecian or Quebec Canadians consider faux pas or insults. Going back to your current question, I own a crossbow, and it has 3 nice pointy practice bolts. And that crossbow can fire a bolt at 300 meters per second squared. That's supposed to be the number on its acceleration. So if I were to try to pierce a human skull or heart with that, they'd probably die instantly. The downside is I only have 3 bolts, so I gotta collect them if I want to keep firing the bolts. And sharpening bolts is its own difficulty. The bolts that I have on my practice bolts are carbon tipped, which means you have to be careful. Not carbon tipped, but like carbon alloy tipped, carbonated steel, and those things rust easy. And if you sharpen them incorrectly, they'll break. Could be better for causing injury, but really you want clean kills. If you've got to defend yourself and it's you or them, if you're trying to be an honorable person about it, give them a clean death. Don't, eviscerate them and leave them on the ground. Confirm the kill. That's an act of mercy. I wouldn't want anyone to be, lying out on the ground with being disemboweled. That's gruesome and unnecessarily cruel. Go there more because you have to. You will go with your dad. He's also go with your dad. He's relatively new to the country, doesn't know German, but he speaks English. Yeah, that'll mean that you can go to Germany's tourist centers at the very least. And his boss usually does the talking with the customers. Ah, so you won't be by yourself. That actually might be even better, because when you're a tourist in a land you are unfamiliar with a language in which you are not wholly familiar, you tend to get lost and mixed up with the wrong crowds rather fast. I've seen it happen to people who come here and don't have good English, and they get caught up in things that other native speakers maybe might not. It's an unfortunate fact of the system. And if you see someone who's not good with English in any English-speaking country, it's kind of your prerogative to make sure they're not being taken advantage of. That's just a good Samaritan thing to do. Don't let people be taken advantage of. Of course, also don't get people killed, but that's a hard task. In human social situations, there's no perfect answer. You're either going to end up risking death in the extreme case, or you could make things worse, or on the other hand, doing nothing could be just as bad. You don't really know. There's no one right answer. You have to decide how you're going to operate when you're in a land that you're not familiar with. You either stick with people you do know, or you can schmooze with the locals and maybe risk getting lost. 2 uncles there. One of them is the boss of the company, and probably your mom will also come with you. It'll be a family affair. That'll be good. You'll have people to fall back on as supports. That's always nice. I really need to repolish my Italian, because I know My sibling is always talking about wanting to go to various countries, and I figured if at least if it's Italy, I'll have some idea of what they're saying, because I've already kind of studied it. Why crossbow? It was given to me as a gift. My dad was like, hey, I know you don't care for guns that much, but I know you've always wanted to learn archery or learn how to use a crossbow. So he literally took me over to like a local Walmart that had a crossbow, and he paid $300 for it as a gift. And unless the gift is just in bad taste, you don't refuse gifts. So, I have the crossbow. I also have an antique sword if I really need it. And as I'm more comfortable with the sword, by the way, that gives you any inclination of how much I don't particularly care for ranged implements. Used to swing sticks as a kid, so I have some amount of novice experience. Plus, as a biology student, I have some amount of anatomical knowledge that makes me dangerous. I know where someone's kidney is. Let me put it that way. If I really needed to defend myself, then if I can't get your heart or your head because I'm too small, I'm not afraid to get your kidneys. I will do that. And that is usually enough to get people on their knees really fast. Well, the kidney shot. It's a terrible thing to know. It's a terrible thing to say you'll do, too, but we're talking about life and death here, right? Which is different. I'm in no way advocating for you to, for anyone to go kidney shot anyone. Future self, in the VOD, make sure you put an explicit warning not to kidney shot people, because I know how the YouTube algorithm is. I can't even believe that content creators have to put a warning on it, but you do. Okay. Alright. Your fault for standing there. Oh, so here in the Murkwater Catacombs, we can pick up another set of ashes and another item, I'm fairly sure. This is less getting something that's useful to us, and more just, for the runes, mainly. Because the boss, I think, drops 2,000 or 3,000. It's enough to put into a hard rune for later. In Romania, you don't really have the idea of self-defense, because if you kill someone, no matter the circumstances, you'll go to jail. Yeah. In some states, it's like that, too. In South Carolina, there aren't self-defense laws. You are legally liable if you kill someone in self-defense. Georgia has a right to self-defense law. That's the state just south of the one I'm in. But South Carolina, amazingly, or unfortunately, does not. That doesn't mean there are always ways in which you can incapacitate your attacker rather than kill them, but in a life or death situation, you can't always think about that, or some people don't have the skill set to do that. So the alternative is jail for a little while on a self-defense charge, or you're dead. I know which one I would choose. You can recover from jail time as long as you do what you're told, and you don't make the wrong enemies. You can't recover if you die. Period. In case the emphasis was needed. Everyone has a right to life, and not to get murdered in their own house. But it's interesting. Self-defense is one of those concepts that definitely does have the chance to go wrong. Like, if you manage to defend yourself and then you go after them and kill them, that's completely different than killing them in the act of self-defense. Sometimes that happens. That is either an accident or a byproduct of the fight. But if you've managed to get them off you and you can't, and then you choose to go back and kill them, then that's not self-defense, that's murder. Not sure in Romania would be for a small amount of time. High chance of jail for life. Well, yeah, that's a much bigger deal, isn't it? But again, what's worse, jail or death? Even if you're in jail for life sentences usually... Well, actually, I don't know. I know in the US, life has a specific definition. It's not like a life sentence. It's 35 years, which is why you sometimes will hear in the news, hey, someone got sentenced to 3 life sentences in jail or in prison. Typically, you don't serve out a life sentence in jail, you serve it in prison. Because it actually has a set amount of time attached to it. Does Romania have a similar practice, or is it life is life? It's up to you to figure out whether it's permanent or, a set amount of time. Yeah, this spell has some impressive range. I can't even believe I managed to... I thought that moving box was another imp for some reason. Terrible. Oh, and I already went through here. Goodness, time flies when you're having a good conversation. We are an hour and 17 in, and I have barely covered the areas I wanted to cover. Thankfully, there aren't too many more. There's a couple of spots. Yeah, I want to make good progress on this. But this is a good conversation. Because it can really... With this, you can answer the broader questions or think about the broader question of, well, should you go to jail for defending yourself? Or should you not? I don't think so. But then again, I'm an American, and we have a history of running from our captors. And it shows in our penal laws. Other countries are like, well, 65 years. Reduced from life to 65. Wow. That is just short of 2 life sentences here. I mean, that's interesting. This discus spell is hard to use. But you reduce the sentence while you're in jail, or is this before the sentence? Typically, in the US, your sentence can get expedited or pardoned, and things that you can do to reduce the sentence before it's applied, not after. Is that pretty much the same way over there in Romania, or while you're in jail? That's interesting. I wonder how common that is in Europe for people to reduce their sentence while in jail. Those are other... Jeez, I cannot... These thrall wannabes. I need a weapon. Reducing your sentence in jail, I think, could be a good thing. But you have to be able... I don't know. Crime's kind of different in the US, where I feel like people who get jailed in Europe are generally aware that they've done something wrong and generally want to fix it. Whereas I don't know for what reason, but some of the most violent, dangerous criminals in the US, or even sometimes just serial killers, it's hard to redeem those people. Not because they can't be redeemed, but they don't want to be. And so allowing those people to reduce their jail sentence puts society at further risk. It's delicate. I'd be interested in knowing how such a policy could work in the U.S. because I think you should be able to reduce your sentence if you behave accordingly and you really show that you earnestly learned from your mistake. And sometimes people get wrongfully jailed too, and the behavior should go towards other things. But as far as I know, that's probably the starkest difference I've seen so far, is just you can do things to reduce the sentence here in the US, but once it's on you, it sticks. The only time it doesn't is like exigent circumstances or other specific things. I'm gonna have to ask you to stop doing this. Alright. And we're gonna have to flask up for this. I think it's the duelist that's in here. Duelist uses like a chain hammer. But I could be misremembering. We're gonna find out how accurate how good I can recall my information here. Yep, that is correct. Graveborn Duelist has surprising range on their attacks. And they can keep going like their life depends on it. Alright, let's tone down that volume a little bit. Or maybe it's the master volume. Yeah, it's the master volume. That was really big deal. Yep, those guys mean business. The dual chain hammers are... I wish we had these. I'll be able to read that in a hot second. And that battle cry... Wow. Okay, I can read it now. This is what happens when I have to spend my MP or my FP on ads. I'll be sprinting past those now. Norway has a very interesting way of punishing criminals. There, you can't have a sentence longer than 21 years. You get therapy at a nice place of jail, and the recidivism is very low. That's good. Yeah, where like you have repeat criminals that come back there. Yeah, that's one thing. It would be tough to say, oh, well, America should just implement how Norway does it. Norway has a much nicer culture compared to us. We have a lot more inherent violence, I guess I would say. Goes along with our nation's history. People over here, sometimes you have people who want to see the world burn. Sometimes you have people for which therapy can only keep at bay the symptoms, and they can't really fix or properly manage what caused the crime in the first place. It's difficult. I'm sure we could find a way to make that kind of policy work, but I think to make that sort of policy work, you would need to see an appropriate culture shift from the US. And I don't know what that culture shift looks like. It could be that we need to move closer in terms of politics and philosophy to where Europe is, and then that'll be reasonable. But as of right now, where you have fascism and fascism light, they're really, it might not work. But I'd be interested. Good lord. I really want these weapons in the game now. These are super cool. That has a big delay. You have to make a change from the route, you've got it. And route changes, I really... I cannot talk today. Those wolves are just off in La La Land, not being of help at all. Alright. What am I gonna spend this on? I will say, the holy spells we have are not set up for this. Boy's armor. I don't for this, or change to a different class. Wizard might be better, or different fortune. Wizard might be better. You have to make a change from the root. Yeah, which, as much as I love my political friends in the U.S. left, that is not a change you can legislate. It really isn't. That's a cultural thing. And I guess that's really kind of an ailment of politics today in the US, or in the United States, is that everyone wants legislation, 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 rules for this and rules for that. And rules are great. Like, codifying rules makes them clear that when you do X or Y or don't do X or Y, this happens. Great, cool, fine. But you can't legislate compassion. You can legislate compliance. You can attempt to legislate fear, but that is not going to work out very well for you. But in terms of being a better human being, laws do not help people do that. You need... It's a philosophical and a spiritual alignment process. I call it a process. I'm a STEM major at heart. Everything is a process, but it's... You need to examine your own biases. You need other people to teach that or impart those values to you. There's not a thing that the government can do about that, nor should it. An attempt by the government at large to forcefully impart certain values is almost the equivalent of brainwashing. Because then, what if those values have a... And I'm being super generic here, I'd have to pick a specific one. But any set of philosophical values always has a downside. Machiavellianism teaches that not everyone is trustworthy and that sometimes absolutely innocent things have a benign motive, but if you consistently applied Machiavellian logic to everything, you would trust no one, and society would be a very cold place. It's a necessary philosophical alignment because sometimes you have enemies, and sometimes you have people who wish you dead, and you need to not trust everything they say. You need to scrutinize what they have to say. It's I hate to use this 7-letter word because everyone will get annoyed when I say it, but there is always a proper philosophical balance. Balance being the operative word. I saw that you have a big problem with tipping culture. Because without tips, workers who work at a restaurant or something can't make a living. I don't have a problem with the tipping culture per se. It's one of those, how do I word this? And it's possible I said something and didn't articulate very well what I should have said. Tipping is fine when there is a sufficient income to go with it. Tipping is not fine when it is the only form of income you get. People are worth more than a tip or a couple of tips. Now, if we're talking about streaming tips, I guess that's a little different, but I'd have to go back and review what I said. I don't know if I have a problem with tipping culture. It's complicated. It's more like sometimes even basic things people want tips for. Like, if you're at a drive-thru, for example, and your drive-thru worker asks for a tip, I know that food service is an unforgiving place. However, what they did was check your order and pass the back to you and answer your questions. They did 3 things, all while servicing some other people. Do they deserve a tip? Sure, but at that point, everyone deserves tips. And I'm not saying don't tip your drive-through window. I'm saying eventually tips become a way for companies to not make a real wage. Or put another way, it allows companies to skirt a real wage instead of, here are tips to go along with your appropriate wage. Which is why I guess I have a problem with it. I have a problem with the way things are. If tips were treated like gifts, where I saw this story on Twitter a couple of days ago, where someone did not give their waiter a tip. Instead, they attached a card that was a gift for the same amount they would have tipped. And the nice thing about gifts in the US is they are generally not taxable. If someone gives you a gift, yes, you put it on your tax form. No, you're not taxed on it. It's a gift. Unless the gift is a specific value. And gifts are not the same as prize winnings from a show. Those would be considered prizes and are absolutely taxable. But gifts are not normally taxed. My point in bringing that up in the first place is to say, if tips were treated like gifts, they would be better. As it is, tips are required, because if you don't tip them, they don't get paid. It's in a weird place. I understand why the system is what it is, but that doesn't mean I have to like the system that exists. I'd have to go back and review what I said and clean up anything I said that was in error. But that is what I should have said, is the tipping culture is a problem because it feels mandatory instead of optional, as you're saying. Tips should be something extra. Like, hey, you did a great job, and I know you're getting paid well. Here's an extra bonus, like 20, 30, 50 US dollars, or insert whatever currency you like, as, hey, you did this awesome job, and I would love to come back for a second one of those. That's just awesome. So, but I apologize if I said something that was untoward for any reason. I should say I didn't mean it, but it's more like I didn't explain myself very well. Just clearing the air there. And thank you for bringing that to my attention, because I don't... What on earth? What are these guys doing? What the hell? I guess I'm gonna have to start summoning them on the other side of the room. I guess just kill me. I'll have to figure out another way to deal with that. Not that I can't do... Also, I just realized in the process of having a good conversation, and I do enjoy those, I forgot to change out my spells. I should do that before I forget this time. No, I don't... Oh, Xbox. I love when my Xbox controller brings up the control menus, or the Xbox game menus, which I thought I had totally disabled, but I didn't. Alright, let's change these spells. We're gonna try our fire spells now. And one nice thing about ERR is that it has its own Reforged, or its own boss statistics. So since I know I'm struggling with the Grave Warden Duelist, I could come over to the boss info spreadsheet, open that up, find the weakness as soon as I can get my hands on this hub here, and see that, oh, it's got a defense of 20 and a poise of 60. It is 10% weak to slash. It takes no extra damage from any element. Good to know. And out of the status effects, it's extremely vulnerable to blood loss, and not so vulnerable to madness. Yay, madness is the only status effect we have. So we might have to go ranger for this one. But for those who want to see what I'm talking about, if you type ERRB, I think it is, yes, I have a link to Google Spreadsheet that has been done by the community that surrounds Elden Ring Reforged. And you can see all of the boss resistances and immunities and, like, the color reference. Like, the table is color-coded. So stuff in orange is resistant, stuff in red is highly resistant, black is immune, green is standard, and, like, dark or lighter green is more vulnerable. Like, the table is intuitive once you know what you're looking at. We'll give it a try with these flame spells, but if that doesn't work, I'll pull out the bow and go from there. Because we do have poison arrows that we can use to, we have poison arrows we can use to help take this guy down. And then we can just sit there and watch him bleed out. Alright, learning from our mistakes. Thankfully, this isn't a hitless challenge, or I'd be in a world of trouble. All right, now that you're actually preoccupied, I see what they meant. I guess I'll go mad trying to make him mad, I guess. At least inflicting madness on myself is the same results. For those who don't know, the fortune I'm using increases your incantation damage when a status effect is inflicted nearby. Any status effect. Death, Blight, Madness, Poison, you name it. This guy just does not relent. And when he does that battle cry, jeez. Okay. That was rougher than it should have been. But yeah, that fight is a perfect example of what happens when you don't have the real capacity to follow the guidelines on that table. We have access to, or I should say, incantations have access to things like poison mist or acid spray or I want to say Death Blight is the thing that incantations can't really access. That belongs to sorceries. But incantations are the primary way to deal with status effects or to dole them out. So when a boss is extremely vulnerable, like 180 or lower for resistance, you want to use Warlock. It is a great class or a great fortune for that. So, unfortunately, and I'm fairly sure I missed timing on the ads, by the way, and I'll talk about those when I get back. We normally take an intermission at around this time, maybe 10 minutes before. I normally take one at the 1.5 hour mark. And I typically go for about 10 minutes at a time on those. So I would use this opportunity to get up, stretch your legs, go cuddle with your loved ones, do all of the things that you would have 10 minutes to do. While I go stretch my legs, change out my coffee for tea, and some other really necessary, crucial stream upkeep things. And with that, I will see you guys in 10 minutes. I am back. Sorry about that. I unfortunately am gonna have to use cough drops instead of tea, and I'm running low on those. I tend to get a bit stuffy without something to constantly clear the back of my throat. I really need to replace these. They're very sticky. Hopefully everyone had a chance to enjoy their intermission. But before I get back to it, there are a couple things I should mention, and they're best said during times like these when nothing is going on. One, I wanted to thank everybody for stopping by. Really appreciate it. I appreciate any contributions that have been made as well. Those are an even rarer sight than people. Of course, no support, no financial support is ever required, ever. But I do appreciate it whenever it arises. Two, I'm gonna get better at managing segments so that whenever you see an ad, it is not disrupted by, me entering or... I'm sorry. Let me make sure I'm saying this right. I'm doing my best to make sure that the pre-roll, or not the pre-roll, but like the automated ad schedule is as undisruptive as possible. I have since learned that some features do activate themselves, including the 60-second ad that only shows up when a stream is active, which is good. I'm glad that there are context-sensitive quick actions I can take. That is something I'll be getting better at, and maybe I can run the ads manually so that there isn't pre-roll ever at all. And I can time those. Because ad revenue does go toward streaming gear, like the mixing board that I talked about. And it would be nice if I didn't have to rely on either a student refund or, shilling myself on stream to make that happen. Because I know nobody really likes that stuff. Nobody really likes me or any streamer shilling. They understand it's part of the process, but we'd rather not do that if we don't have to. It's not good entertainment. But I did want to bring a couple methods and some shilling to your attention. First, the easiest two methods of supporting me that there are follows. If you like the content, feel free. Following and making sure your notifications are turned on is a great way to make sure that you don't miss Elden Ring Reforged or Blasphemous on Fridays. Two, the other thing you can do is make sure that you spread the word. That is as good as a follow, in my opinion. That means that you're sharing what the stream is about. And word of mouth is a good thing to have in this business. I want to do my best to make sure that I'm worthy of you spreading the word about me, but I do have to ask for it. Just like most other streamers have to ask for this sort of thing. Second, if you do like my content enough to financially support it further, I have a couple of options for you. First, if you want fanfare and you like getting attention on stream, I have a couple of donation links that you can use if you want to give money directly to me and you do not want Twitch getting cut of it for whatever reason. Those are in the About Me section of my channel, and there will be a list of donation links under there. If you don't want the fanfare and still want to donate, and you like lurking, you will love the coffee link that I have set up that is specifically designed so that there are no alerts attached to it, and you can donate in as small as $2 increments. Fantastic if you're like, I don't want I don't want the alerts, but I still like, this streamer or that streamer. I think a lurker-friendly option is just a good thing to have. Finally, if you don't like ads at all, and you want emotes, I know this is over-the-top shilling, but I promise this is the last thing I'll shill about. If you don't want ads on my channel, and as long as Twitch isn't screwing us all over, you can use either a Twitch Prime sub if you're already if you've already got a Twitch Prime or a Amazon Prime account. A Twitch Prime sub will skirt ads for you while you are sub to me, or any sub of any level will clear the ads and keep the pre-roll off of you. And I have some nice emotes. Some of them are pixely, some of them are realistic. Some of them are handmade or hand-edited, and others, especially my good ones, come from, his name's Ray. It's on my page, but I want to do better than that. I'm going to pull up said page really quick so that I can talk about it. So, Calligraphy Inc. is the website that I got my emotes from. There's a panel dedicated to that site. If you want a nice top hat, it's for. Anything else that looks really good at TV level resolutions and okay on PC is at the $9.99 or $24.99 tier. I'm not worth all that yet. And I'm not sure I'm worth that hat, but I'm working my way towards being a good streamer. A good content creator for that. But if you want emotes and you don't want ads, subbing to me is the easiest way to prevent that from happening to you. It won't be perfect, but outside of using things like ad blockers, or very advanced ad blockers, that's pretty much about the only way, is to play into Twitch's system so that you don't have to watch the ads. But that's enough shilling from me. You didn't come to hear shilling. You came to watch Elden Ring. And that's what I intend to do. And for those who are listening and haven't turned away at the merest mention of ads or, shilling, I appreciate it. And I can't blame those that do. I wouldn't do that if I didn't feel I had to. It's part of being up in the business, the market. If you're gonna be a content creator, Twitch is a place where competitors gather and support each other, but they compete against you as well. So being able to realize that subtle distinction and work towards ways that improve your competitors but also improve yourself is, in no small part, extremely important to the business. And I hope I am doing everything that I can to honor that, but I know that I am not a Markiplier. I am not a Happy Hob. I'm not even a medium tier streamer as an affiliate. I know I don't have the personality for that. I just don't. The most I have is an analytical mind that I do my best to give to all of you each and every day that I'm here on this platform streaming. It's not perfect, but I do my best to fully think through all of the questions you give me. I do my best to make sure that I sufficiently answer them, and I'm not just, lying to you or, saying things you want to hear. I try to make sure I'm telling the truth, and I try to make sure I'm not just your run-of-the-mill streamer who's like, I only talk about positive things. You can't talk about the state of the world, or it's gonna lose me views. I don't do that either. I want us to be able to talk about serious subject matter, and that means sometimes it gets too hot for Twitch advertising to handle. And I understand that. My opinions are also not perfect. I'm not trying to sell them like they're gold. I definitely have opinions that people can consider scummy sometimes. I do my best to make sure I don't have them and to try to educate myself or start talking about them. But sometimes we're all human. We all make that mistake. Sometimes we don't. We want to be able to comment without having to look over our shoulders to make sure we say the right things all the time. That method of conversation is very taxing. I mean, granted, making sure you research anything before you start talking about it is good practice. But sometimes you're not speaking from that position. You're not speaking from trying to get more information. You're trying to elicit a call to action, or you simply want to make your position on something known, rather than in the dark and hiding it. People generally don't trust those who are completely ambiguous to all situations. They want to know you're human. They want to know that you react in a human way to news and information that's out there. And you aren't just some corporate shill, that you're a cog in the machine for no reason, and the corporate or government system can do no wrong. That you're subservient for whatever reason. And I do my best not to empower or encourage that. People are not cogs in a machine, they're people. If people were cogs in a machine, then ethics regarding computers or medical research wouldn't exist. You wouldn't have those ethics because people would be tools. For example, we could understand innately how every section of the human body works, but you know how we do that with animals? We sometimes vivisect them, which means to cut them open while they're alive and see how their organs pump blood, or other things. And vivisection only applies to organisms, by the way. When you're vivisecting, in air quotes, plant cells, those things don't have nerves and don't feel pain. You are cutting open a plant, but they don't have nerve tissue. So there aren't moral implications to that. There might be moral implications of what you do with plants, but not what you do to plants. You see the difference. Animals are not like that. When you vivisect a dolphin, you are hurting that dolphin, and you should know it. And only should you know it, but I think you should feel horrible about that, because that thing feels pain. And vivisection is only a step removed from surgery. Vivisection is cutting open for knowledge. Oh, I didn't even bother to look at weaknesses. That could be my downfall. Oh yeah, that's gonna be my downfall. Crucible Knight. Crucible Knights are... have 30 defense, 85 poise, are 5% weak to strike, they're weak to lightning, they are neutral to magic, so that means wizard. And out of the status effects, they are most vulnerable to sleep, but resist just about everything else, and can't bleed. So, our only recourse is to go back, change our class, and re-outfit our spells. But that's one of the nice things about um, our build is that if we're using incantations mainly, and something is just not gonna be weak to any of them, we switch. We absolutely switch. And we have quite a few options we could use in order to deal or fight the boss. Don't worry, I'll get better at speaking eventually. I just need to keep streaming. I need to keep talking to myself. I need to keep talking, because otherwise I will, be. I guess I should say, being 30 and being in a situation where you feel like you can't really share your knowledge, you can't just blurt out what you think, it's usually wrong, means you're holding it in a lot. You're talking in your head and not bothering to say what you think. And in an academic environment, you kind of have to do that, because you do not. Why did this option go gray just now? Okay, it's because we ran ads. Makes sense. Your answer needs to be correct or have a reasonable line of thinking, or it's a waste of time. It's a waste of class time, because at my university, classes are 50 minutes. So we don't have time to mill about talking about theory. You need to email your instructor for that. So if you don't have the right answer, there's no point in gabbing. Now, when you're talking about like a humanity or history, it's about how you're thinking about something. So yeah, saying what you think can indeed be useful. Simply because you're being asked for your interpretation. In STEM fields, you're asked for your interpretation on something about half the time. When you're asked to apply your knowledge or synthesize a piece of knowledge out of what you already know, that's when you could say what you think. When you're trying to recall something, you need to be verbatim exact, or you're not getting any time of day. You're just not. Crucible Knight. Before I begin, I want to make sure to go over Crucible Knight. Crucible Knight has two phases. First phase is kind of what you saw. He has multiple sweeps. He has a stomp that sends out a shockwave, deals lots of damage. I probably need to shuffle this out for a Holy Talisman. I don't think he breathes fire yet. That's a different one. And Crucible Knight here will kind of block your attacks a lot. So you could be aggressive, but you can't be... you can't just attack all willy-nilly. You have to wait for him to open up. Or you have to goad him into opening by attacking into the shield. One of those two things is happening. Also, thanks to Zully the Witch, which is a known data miner for Dark Souls games or FromSoft titles, we know that bosses don't read inputs. They read animations, which means, because animations are preloaded, and they're queued. So as soon as you do an action, when you take the action, the animation starts. The AI will say, okay, this animation is playing right now. This animation is tied to this specific action, and we can punish that. We have an action ready for it. That's what they don't tell you, is that there's an animation read going on. Phase 2, and I'll read that comment in just a moment. Phase 2 is exactly like Phase 1, except the boss will add flying attacks, charge attacks, and tail sweeps. You'll see what I mean when he transforms, but he does have a phenomenal Phase 2. But really, it's You just have to be patient with phase 2. Let's see. And I'll read this before I start, because once I start, Crucible Knight demands my attention, and I can't be talking while I'm fighting him. Crucible Knight has a lot of animation reads. Science can be useful and scary at the same time, reading the correction ahead of time. I saw a video about Fritz Haber. He discovered how to synthesize ammonia, and it was a valuable scientific discovery. He won a Nobel Prize for it, but at the same time, he used this discovery to make explosives and chemical weapons for Germany in World War II. Yeah. Like, for example, if I could talk about how phenacetin is made. Phenacetin is the drug precursor to Tylenol, acetaminophen. Phenacetin is made by performing an ether synthesis from acetaminophen. There's an inverse process to make Tylenol. The only difference between phenacetin and acetaminophen is a hydroxyl group on the end of the molecule, whereas phenacetin has an ether molecule. Or not an ether molecule, an ether group, excuse me. An ether is just oxygen bonded to two different groups at the same time. So you have group A, oxygen, group B, or a hydrogen, or something else here. That is an ether. And the difference is phenomenal. Tylenol is exceptional at causing or at relieving pain. Phenacetin also relieves pain, but it carries the risk of cancer. And one of the reasons that is because when the ether part of the molecule is stripped, what you're left with can be an unstable molecule that contains double bonds. Double bonds in molecules are electron sources, meaning things that like to attack, and attack is the term they use for this. Things that like to attack double bonds on benzene or benzyl groups will attack those and open them up. And double bonded molecules and triple bonded molecules are excellent at alkylating things. Alkylating is a fancy way of saying I'm adding a methyl or a methane or an ethane group to the molecule, which can make it very dangerous. That sort of discovery is what prompted people to realize that phenacetin needed to be acetaminophen and not the other way around. Because phenacetin was used long before Tylenol, and people would sometimes get cancer from it if they used it for long periods. Yeah, science is a scary thing, but from the scary stuff comes, there's an opportunity to fix mistakes or turn the scary discovery into a better discovery or a more useful discovery. I'm sure there are probably uses for phenacetin once you figure out where or how you can break down the molecule or the molecular structure, because phenacetin has an amino group or an amine group, and it has that ether on the end, in addition to a benzyl group on the inside. That's that ring, that carbon ring. And molecules are ripped out, or broken down. That's what I want to use. Molecules like that are broken down into simpler, more easily worked molecules for synthesis or workup or what have you. Complex molecules and the deconstruction reactions or decomposition reactions required to break those molecules down into something simple are extremely important. But in the process, when you get the side products that are saved for later, and those have a use, if they're not studied properly, those can be scary things indeed. Alrighty, I will see you guys on the other side of this fight. Thank you. Okay, those rocks are not good. So, the nice thing about my setup I didn't get the chance to say yet was that Ambush Shard, thank you very much for the GGs, Ambush Shard goes behind guarding opponents. And it's set at a set distance behind whatever you're targeting, up to the maximum distance the spell provides. So I think people remember how I said that, you know, the Crucible Knight guards against a lot of attacks, but you got to keep attacking anyway, or you got to watch that shield. That's true if you don't have Ambush Shard or some other Knight sorceries. This invalidates shields almost completely because it's attacking from behind the guard. You would need like a Shotel or like Sky Arrow or Volley to be able to get past shielding opponents. There are spells that do pierce guard, but Ambush Shard is a generator, which means when it connects, it regenerates FP, or you gain additional FP on hit, which means it offsets its cost a lot. It deals more damage than a traditional generator because it costs more. I totally blanked out on what I was saying. Also, there are drawbacks to Ambush Shard. And Ambush Shard is probably one of the quickest options to deal with shields out there. There aren't a whole bunch of drawbacks. It's really nice. Only if the enemy can already see you coming, it's not such a great option. You're better off with like a Carrion Slicer or Glintstone Pebble. Both of those do a lot more, well, not a lot more damage. It's actually less on cast, but you're not, you don't have the animation to deal with. It's a good spell. And without it, I probably would have been dealing with a Crucible fight for upwards of 20 minutes, and I might have burnt myself out and left myself vulnerable by attempting to flask when it wasn't a good idea to do so. So if you're going to go up against the Crucible Knight in Elden Ring Reforged, I highly recommend having some way to back attack the enemy, and Ambush Shard is easily the best method I've seen so far. The rest have longer animations but deal more damage. For example, Litany of Proper Death will get it's a ground AoE, so it does not get affected by shields either. But it takes a long time to cast in exchange for it. Really? Okay then. But you can defeat Crucible Knight with enough effort. You can also use sorceries and incantations that get close, such as Carrion Slicer or Catch Flame. You just have to wait until they're done attacking. Crucible Knight is a fair fight. They are not Melania. Melania is what I would call an unfair fight. But by the time you get to Melania, you were expected not to pull any punches, because she isn't either. There's a reason that Let Me Solo Her is a trend. There's a reason why people are saying it. Because when you break down the fight and you're able to actually work through the problems with Melania's encounter, she is a beautiful boss. And both of her phases are majestic to behold. But playing through them, oh god, unfair. Get me out of here, Joe, is what I would have to say to that. I'm hoping that as we play through the game more, I can, in fact, sell the franchise to some people that maybe are like, this isn't really for me. Maybe the base game isn't. But with Elden Ring Reforged, animations are sped up. You don't have a useless backdash. You have a duck instead. You can deflect things. Hitboxes are fixed. Animations are cancelable into each other. As long as they're of a different type. The game is both more straightforward and it's faster than Elden Ring. Elden Ring has the natural Dark Souls clunkiness to it. They're like, things are slow, because FromSoft feels like it, which is part of the Dark Souls or FromSoft game experience. Sometimes things are hard just cause. And when you're talking about, give me just a moment, please. Gotta fix something. My apologies. My capture card decided it wanted to fall off the table, and it probably had been that way for a while. So there might have been some additional slowdowns that were caused due to that. Thankfully, it was easy to fix. Just pick it up off the floor or put it back on the table. Modders were always important for games. They keep some alive, like GTA 5. Oh yes, modding communities are very important for games that are modular and customizable, or even for games that just, need a fan base to get going. Modding the game is one of the quickest ways to get that audience. Things like Potion Craft Alchemist Simulator doesn't exactly have a whole bunch of mods going for it at the moment, but whenever the new beta test for that finishes and the actual patch or the actual game is ready to be released, there's already a modding community in place ready to add mods to the Potion Craft experience. And it will absolutely be glorious when it does. Games like Skyrim, which should have been dead a long time ago, are still alive today because their modding communities are very prolific, and there are a number of smaller dev teams that have even made whole games based off the engine. Skyrim has Enderall, for example. Skyrim has Enderall. Skyrim Anniversary Edition has Enderall Special Edition. Skyrim also gets Nerim, which is... it's supposed to be a recreation of Oblivion, the previous installment, in Skyrim. And I know there's one where, like, it's Morrowind in Skyrim's engine. There's a lot of modding out there, and it's really sophisticated. Modders breathe new life into existing titles and keep them going for far longer than they already should. And that's a good thing, by the way, because it adds to the replayability of said games. And also, from modding work, new ideas can be implemented. New ideas can be added to further original IPs later down the line. Sometimes the games even make a reference to the mods, or even sometimes hire modders on for future projects. For example, Pathfinder. That is the action or real-time strategy RPG, tabletop RPG adaptation that has 2 installments, Kingmaker and Wrath of the Righteous. Kingmaker had a mod author who did like an overhaul, and the overhaul was so good that the dev team literally asked, quite literally asked the guy to join their real development team for Wrath of the Righteous, and he did, as well as making official patch content for Kingmaker. I know that's the story that went down. I just forget the exact mod or the exact mod author and which mod was responsible, but I know that story exists. That is modding at its best. Dota was a mod for Warcraft? It was. And then it became its own game. Yeah, it's amazing. Modding is awesome. And it's yet another reason why I try to focus on modded content where I can. Sometimes you can't. Blasphemous is a game that only has, reshades for its modding, like its modding capacity, or recolors. And to be quite honest, people really don't want to see base game plus recolor as a mod. Sometimes they do, but only if like a speedrunner or someone else does it. Like, people aren't there for the recolor. The recolor is a conversation topic. You see what I'm saying? People want to see something new. Like if Blasphemous were a... If Blasphemous had a... I don't want to say a better NG Plus system, because Blasphemous has a decent NG Plus system. If Blasphemous had additional areas, or an extra mode, kind of like Bloodstained has extra modes. If Blasphemous had a mod-developed extra mode, that would get people's attention. Not that a recolor doesn't, but the mode will keep their attention for longer, whereas a recolor is a 5-minute conversation topic, and then it's not really mentioned unless something catches the eye again. But mods of all shapes and stripes are important. And I think they're worth the attention. They deserve it. Plus, it's novel. It's a 2-in-1 exchange. I get to showcase the mod. And I try to ask I didn't used to do this, but since making sure content creators and artists get their fair share on content medium a lot more often, I've been asking where I can to showcase the mods in their respective Discord channels. For example, with ERR, I can actually post that I'm streaming this. I do that even in the designated do that because it's different than posting a YouTube video. Just a little. You're posting something that you're not posting live content. A video you can click away the second you don't like it. A stream, I guess you can tab out the second you don't like it, but I don't know. I guess there's just a different feel to live content. But there really shouldn't be a difference. But still, self-advertising generally requires permission. So I ask. I try to be in the habit of asking. And the result with Elden Ring Reforged is I'm hopefully getting people in that server to talk about it more, as well as the mod author occasionally popping in, lurking, and saying, oh, or seeing, oh, this one is struggling with this content, or is talking about this thing, and that makes me go, ooh, I have an idea, or I know what I want to include in the mod next. I want to spur conversation, showcase the mod, and be a content creator all at the same time, doing something that the big names don't normally do until after they've played the base game, and something that might take smaller viewerships a longer time to get to. I want to be the first person who does that. It's not entirely selfless. I do this for me as well, but I like to think that I'm benefiting folks who get to come by and see it. Like I was able to benefit someone today by answering questions related to the mod. Where do I find this feature or that feature? And by playing through it, I'm capable of providing that service, on top of being a content creator. How are people liking Elden Ring Reforged so far? I realize that Elden Ring Reforged, in its where we are currently at with it, it's really not any different than watching someone play Elden Ring right now. Really, the only things that are different are subtle changes. They're not like, oh, there's a new spell, or, oh, there's a new boss, or a new campsite, or whatever. Elden Ring modding has come a long way, but it's not where DS3's is. You can't add, I am going in the wrong direction. You can't add, for example, the map tool isn't fully developed for Elden Ring yet, because the way that map tools work for Elden Ring is different than how it worked in DS3. In DS3, everything had its own param file. Whereas here, sometimes textures are directly stored in one of those file types. meaning you can't just separate the textures and say, or assets and say, oh, okay, I can make a map now. No, you gotta hand pick them out and probably use a different method for getting access to those assets. Weapon models and armor models, as well as movesets, are really about the only things that are new right now. On top of that, Elden Ring also has kind of a hidden capacity limit for mods right now. Basically, right now, Elden Ring modding is at this place where you need to trade something to mod something else. So, for example, let me see if I can find an item that will demonstrate this. Okay, no, not exactly. Anything else? Okay. I can't demonstrate this right now, but if I return to Roundtable Hold, I'll be able to. Weapon affinities. In Elden Ring, there are 9 or 10. You have ones that scale with each of the stats and have a specific damage type associated with them. Or 3 out of those, like 9 or 10, are physical. One scales with strength, one scales with dex, one scales with both. Those are your limits. And of course the null enhancement. Elden Ring Reforged adds like an extra 14 of those. And that's like a hard cap of 24. Why? Because they're unused things that Kernifer can clear out and add something in for, as well as changing out what a spell's contents do, or what a specific Ash of War does. Right now, we're at this point where you need to trade, or do a 1-for-1 in order to mod the game. And you're limited by the space the unused assets or unused content takes up. For example, there's a boss later in the game called Godskin Duo. Godskin Duo is infamous for being a really hard fight. Baseline ER, you can cheese them, kind of, by putting them to sleep. You can inflict sleep on them. There are a few ways to do it, but in the methods that you can use to do it, they'll stay asleep for a while, like at least 50 seconds, at least. Which is what the duration in ERR is, by the way, is 50 seconds. Elden Ring has an unused piece of AI script that says, hey, one of my Godskin partners is asleep. Let me go wake them up. They don't do this in regular Elden Ring. That's cut from the script, because the Godskin Duo fight is hard enough over there. But because of all the content changes, what Kernifer was basically able to do is say, oh, this AI script is actually really novel. Why wasn't it included? I'm going to turn it on. And the Godskin Duo fight is a slight bit harder because of that, when it is already a hard fight. However, their hitboxes and stuff have been improved, so your dodges aren't eaten up by things that should not have hit you in the first place. But they did because hitbox errors. Kernifer is a really good mod author, and I'd love to know what their technical expertise is, and generally I want to know more about them. They seem like a really interesting person to get to know. Kernifer is very closed in that regard, as far as I can tell. People on Discord don't really know about them, they know about the work they do. Which I guess is a fine line to have. I suppose if you're a content creator or you're a mod author, you want a certain level of distance. I cannot find this for the life of me. Maybe it's further down and I didn't see it. We're looking for a catacomb, basically. And I feel like this is already definitely going to be a two-parter. Definitely a two-parter. But that's fine. You know, sometimes we get to having good conversation, and that in my book is always a win-win. It's always a better deal when I get to actually talk to people. Sometimes can't have that, and those cases, you're going to make a lot of in-game progress. But sometimes, oh, gabbing is really half the reason you're on a stream in the first place. You want to hear someone's perspective, get their opinions, see them play a game you like to play yourself and don't have the time to play all the time. And you want to be part of a bigger community. So talking to them is good. But sometimes that gets in the way of what they're trying to showcase. Not that the conversations ever get in my way. The reason I don't make progress is because I'm a terrible multitasker. I cannot really flick my attention back and forth very fast. Alright, I've got to figure out where this is. That's Tomb's Ward. I know that we're looking for the catacombs. So what did that AI do to that boss exactly? So that AI script made it so that because the Godskin duo are two bosses, you're fighting both of them at once. That wasn't really a thing except in specific cases in other FromSoft titles, where the boss AI was very subdued. Here, you fight duo bosses a lot. And that script basically said, hey, the player put my other counterpart to sleep. That script was specifically set to trigger on a sleep animation that both bosses are capable of having. And the net result of that script is to say, okay, my partner is asleep. I'm going to go over, stop what I'm doing, and actually wake them up. That was the one really cool piece of script that I thought would have made the Godskin duo more like a council-style fight, where like the council is very capable of protecting themselves and each other. Without that script, it kind of just feels like you're fighting two bosses at once. It adds an interesting dimension. You can put them to sleep and focus on one, but now if you don't put them both to sleep, all it buys you is a breather to drink a flask. Really is what that comes down to. Which I think is very cool. I wish that FromSoft had kept that script in, because that's a very novel piece of script. But that would have... For them to keep that in, they either had intended for sleep to be the sleep status to be a more integral condition to the fight, where you expect the player to have soporifics that put people to sleep, or they're gonna realize, oh hey, I need to get soporifics and put people to sleep. And having an AI script that specifically counters this adds to the dynamic. But it's cutting room floor material, and I'm glad that Kernifer brought that in. I cannot... Here's Tomb's Ward. And the Tomb's Ward catacombs are over there. Oh, I marked it on the map. I'm silly. Okay. I marked it on the map like a boss, and then didn't bother to say, oh, maybe that was on the cliff and not, along the edge. So what we're going to do is go back to the Church of Pilgrimage and attempt to get to it from the cliff. Like dropping down onto where the catacombs should be. That's one of the things I will say about Elden Ring. In other FromSoft titles, the world is linear, so you will eventually find these places on the map. Or you'll remember where they are. You'll bump into them and say, oh, what's this? Oh, what's that? You'll find the item at the end and you can warp back to your last bonfire, and it's fine. Here, the world is open, and FromSoft put a lot of these catacombs in, a lot of these mini dungeons in these obscure places, which on one hand I think is really cool because it rewards you for exploring, the open world they have. And it's huge. Would people believe me if I said that this is approximately 10% or 15% of the overworld? And this doesn't even touch what's underground. The place is huge. This is the biggest game, like Elden Ring, not this mod, but Elden Ring is the biggest game of all time that FromSoft has ever created without DLC. It's huge. On the other hand, all of the catacombs are sort of the same when you really get down to it. Yeah, especially the places where you can go entering a coffin, you can walk past them. Yeah. The attention to detail is good. Like, these models are extremely high quality. The assets look like they're part of the environment. But you can hide some... If there were a hole right here, or, there was like a crevice here, you could, and there was like a cover or a door on top of it, you could miss it. The game really asks you to pay attention. I like that about the game, but it's so big that you can't possibly, it's hard to do a 100% playthrough the first time through the game without a guide when you have to pay that much attention all the time. All the time. And don't get me started on the number of quests in Elden Ring and what you have to do to complete them. One of the quests, I know, asks you to go talk to a bunch of NPCs a bunch of times. And as you talk to them, they move. Which, in Dark Souls 3 or Dark Souls 2 or some other linear title, you'll eventually find them. Now, it might be too late when you find them, depending on what you've done before you start talking to NPCs, but you will find them. In Elden Ring, the open world makes the questing 4 times as difficult. Because you can miss an NPC simply by walking past that same coffin we were talking about. And if you walk past that coffin and you go and do something, something even as innocuous as killing 10 enemies, that NPC's dialogue can change on that alone. Granted, none of them do this, but I'm making an example here to prove a point. Which is, Elden Ring really stretches the boundaries of game design that FromSoft have worked so hard to cultivate. In some aspects, the design choices are really good. And in other aspects, the level or game design leaves things to be desired. And you can tell they had to cut corners some places due to animations or hitbox errors or something else. Kurtifer published a couple of hitbox edits that they made where, like, the hitboxes were weird shapes. Where, like, a sword had a log-shaped hitbox, which I might not need to say this to you, but for others, sword hitboxes are narrow and come to a point. They should not be logs. They should not have missing hitbox edits. Now, Elden Ring's a huge game, so I'm not trying to be hard on FromSoft. They did a lot. And there was such a drastic push to get the game published. They did a lot. But you still have to be responsible for the errors you make as a game developer. And when people notice how many small corners you cut, it does eventually add up. And I think what we're going to see moving forward from FromSoft is the future IPs they make are going to be bigger in some aspects and definitely smaller in others. Because Elden Ring really pushed what they were capable of doing in a good and a bad way. For example, and the reason I say that it's good and bad is that in Dark Souls 3, there is a DLC area. And this is part of the Ringed City DLC. It's the second one. The Ringed City has an area that had assets and design features the original base game was supposed to have. It is well known that Miyazaki ran out of budgeting for base Dark Souls 3. And so that stuff had to be preserved and saved for DLC. And people did complain about reused assets there, but the DLC was good in every other place and it wasn't as big of a deal. This game is over 4 times the size of Dark Souls 3 with way more assets, and people are begging for DLC. Not already, but there are a lot of unanswered questions. Things that FromSoft actually does want to answer. They just need the time to do it. So, when Elden Ring is considered such a large magnum opus, that the only place to go is down, or not down in quality, but where they're having to make obvious trades for things. Things that'll be obvious once you start looking at the design elements, and not just like, ooh, shiny. Ooh, game developer studio made another big game. When you actually sit and look at their design elements, you'll notice, especially if you data mine it, or you wait for data mining to come out, that there were things that had to have elegant solutions and things that had their corners cut. It's a struggle in game design. I'm not a game developer, but I've watched enough videos on analysis of game devs that I can sort of form a passing analysis on it. Where I'm not sure that FromSoft left themselves in the best position with Elden Ring, because now everyone is going to want an ARPG this size, with this many good assets, with this many bosses. Elden Ring has over 206 bosses. That's major bosses, like plot-relevant bosses, such as, say, Margit. Field bosses, like Agil, that we've already fought. And smaller bosses, such as, say, the Erdtree Watchdog Guardian. Those things that you could totally skip over. There are over 200 of those total bosses. They're gonna be pressured to make a game at least this big, and I fear that FromSoft won't be able to recover and continue producing good games for the masses if they fail to meet expectations even once. Even just once. And I'm going to be very sad when that happens. Because if there's anything that people should know about gamers as a consumption audience, is that the demand and the criticism are insatiable and relentless. I try to be better than that, and I'm not saying that all gamers are insatiable and relentless and offer undue criticism. I'm just saying we have history. We have various controversial events in game development and marketing history that show this. I just have to go find a collection of examples to show you that the audience is truly insatiable. I've rambled for 9 minutes and not done what I was supposed to do. I can gab at people a lot. I'm an extrovert by trade, or by nature, excuse me. I love talking with people. Granted, I'm kind of a stuffy person when it comes to talking, so I can be boring, but I do like talking to people. I feel energized after I talk to people, unless they're a drain or I'll wrap it up with another story, and this one I'll keep short because I don't want the stream to end on a bad note. I don't want a divine fortune. I want to select one. I was casting sorceries as a warlock. Fantastic. Switch those out. So, Monday. This Monday. I am an organic chemistry student. I work with hexanes and toluene and ethanol and water. I work with all kinds of solvents. And sometimes those and other chemicals, whatever I'm trying to make or synthesize, really. And it's very dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. You can get cancer if you're exposed to some of the stuff I work with, like diethyl sulfate. Diethyl sulfate is a known carcinogen, and it's very toxic. And your body can form epoxides with it. Things that your body will naturally concentrate into a more lethal substance without getting too detailed about it. On Monday, I come into the lab, and I'm expecting to... I have a lab partner. We're not assigned partners, we find a partner. And I'm expecting, at this point, that we work on a group project together, or that we're working on one lab together. No. This instructor does not bother, and I will not mention his name, because I don't want to hurt his reputation, because he's a no-nonsense kind of guy, and I can appreciate that. But also, I just don't want to bring undue attention to both myself and him. So I will not say his name. It was an individual lab. And we were not told this. We were not told, hey, you have a lab partner, but unless I tell you, you're working by yourself. All you're doing is talking with your partner to confirm a few things. That's it. Not a great start with this instructor, who said I overstepped for working in my partner's station. Fine. Okay. I didn't know how things worked. So I said I'll do better. And leave it at that. I continued going through the experiment, not but 5 minutes after that incident. I begin measuring my compounds. Acetaminophen, in very small amounts, which requires a delicate hand in order to avoid spilling it onto the balance scale, or the weighing device. I have twitchy hands, which means I don't have cerebral palsy or Parkinson's or anything like that. It's not uncontrollable. It's just I don't have a delicate touch when it comes to glassware. I tend to break it, or I tend to make a mess if I'm not being conscientious about it. So I start measuring the acetaminophen. The instructor stops me and says, "You're going too slow." And I'm like, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, we're here for 2.5 hours. We're almost here for 3 hours. And I know that a lot of instructors like to leave the lab early so they can prepare for the next section. But leaving early should be a reward for knowing what you're doing, not an expectation just so the instructor could have spare time. If you're promised 2 hours and 40 minutes, you should expect that. You should have that. Of course, if there's a hard cutoff, fine. That's within the school's rights. That's within the instructor's rights. But you should at least get the time you're promised. The experiment keeps going. Maybe 30 minutes in, after I've set up my glassware, instructor stops by the workbench, asks what we're doing, and then he stops me from doing what I'm doing because apparently I have not... How do I word this very carefully? We were reflexing something, which means to heat gently and stir for a long time. Apparently, I had set up the vacuum filtration in case we needed to recrystallize something before starting the reflex, because I like to make sure I have my contingencies prepared. Nope. He turned off the vacuum and proceeded to touch the setup, the apparatus that I was handling. Great, cool. And then expected me to know what time he had turned the device, or which settings he used, which settings he punched in, when he did those things, so that I can record how much time had passed. Reflexing requires a specific amount of time. We're supposed to reflex. In that particular experiment, we were supposed to reflex for 40 minutes. Fine. Then, as we start to trend toward the end of the experiment, there are a couple of other interactions I'm leaving out for obvious reasons. And both my partner and I were cleaning. Or he had cleaned, I was wrapping up my station to start cleaning. And he had basically told me that I hadn't cleaned, and that I should be cleaning already. And he didn't outright say it, but it was I basically felt as though that was an attack on my work ethic, because I bend over backwards to make sure glassware is clean. I will stay over lab time if I'm allowed to do so. If my glassware isn't clean, I will scrub until my ride shows up before. Just to make, or not before, but I'll scrub. And I'll scrub and scrub until it's clean. Because I know that the section ahead of mine has to use the same glassware. We're sharing lab drawers with other people. They use our glassware, so it needs to be clean. I have no idea if I cleaned it well enough, because by the time I had hit that point, I was so emotionally despondent that I was probably about 2 to 3 interactions from leaving the lab and sitting in a bathroom for a while. Woe betide my partner, because I would have been too emotionally distraught. I sort of needed to get that out of my system, because I really wanted to pass out from all the emotional stress. It was a lot. But there is a silver lining, and that is, this is just the first lab of many, and I know that this instructor is no nonsense and it wants to be very efficient. So I know I shouldn't take it too personally, no matter how bad I feel about it. And my feelings are legitimate, but I'm trying to ground them and put them in perspective. If this continues, then I'll know it's just part of his character, and I'll have to figure out what to do about that. Because I'm not sure... I do poorly in timed high-stress environments. I get the anxiety sweats really bad. So, I'm lucky I wasn't a shaking mess that day. But the silver lining is, don't judge people by the first interaction you have with them, or the first real stressful situation. Wait, always make sure it's part of their character first. Then you can probably comment on it. But people are going to feel what they feel, and there's nothing to do about it except talk through it. Go find a therapist and then cry if that'll make you feel better, and otherwise find something to be productive about it. To be productive, to move on, so that you're not dwelling on it. For those that sat through all that, even lurking, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the support that I've received today. I'm working to feel like I've earned that support. I appreciate everything that you guys have done today. If you guys like the content, and I know leaving on this is bad, is kind of bad, but this has been the 3-hour mark, and so I do have to stop for today. If you guys like the content, feel free to leave me a follow. It lets me know that you like it, and that I can keep doing this. Financial support is never required, but if you do like to financially support me, I have donation options set up for that. Your donations go toward better streaming equipment, such as the mixing board I referred to today. If you guys want to get a touch or a hold of me in any direct capacity, Twitter is the best place for that. I also have a community Discord that I share with some other content creators. So if you don't mind being exposed to them, you can check out Ob10 Network Discord. It'll be the red tab in the About Me section. And I'm not super active there, but I do talk sometimes. So there are at least 2 places you can get to me. I'm of course considering my other places of access, such as Instagram or I don't know, TikTok, but I want to think about where those fit in to my brand before I just commit to more social media. That might be like a sub reward or something. Where like, hey, I post these things that I don't post anywhere else. You can come find me here, and I'll hand that to you at this sub tier or whatever. I don't know. I'm still thinking through that. But regardless, Twitter and Discord are the best places to get to me. Twitter more so than Discord. Unfortunately, I don't really see... I'm going to refresh the Twitch page for these, but I don't see anyone that I can really host at the moment. So I am going to go ahead and just turn it off to wherever the auto host is going to go. I generally don't like hosting or rating people unless I know them. That way, I'm not being dishonest. Now, I do take host or raid requests, but again, it's one of those, you have to say something, or else I'm going to just follow my routine. Again, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. I've spent too long on this outro already. I'll see you guys on Friday with some Blasphemous, which will be a much needed and necessary break from Elden Ring. I've been playing it pretty emphatically. It'll be nice to do something else. And with that, I will see you guys then. Take care, stay safe out there, and my hallowed halls are always a place that you could come to engage in fine conversation and generally just find some peace more than anything else. And with that, I will see you guys later. Take care, and bye-bye.